What's up, guys? Kian Mansour here, a Roux solver from Canada. Thank you for listening to episode 79.
Hi, this is Daniel Goodman.
Dylan Wang from JPerm.
Ian Scheffler.
Kian Mansour from India.
This is Alex from Z3Cubing.
What's up, guys? This is Jaden McNeil from Australia, and you're listening to the Corner Cutter Podcast.
Hey, that's right. Welcome to the Corner Cutter Podcast. Podcasting since 2014 and cubing since 2015. I'm your host, Josh, and this is the most consistent speed cubing podcast dedicated to entertain and educate you with in-depth conversations with cubers from all across the sport. My website is thecornercutterpodcast.com, and on there you can find show notes, links, and other great resources all about cubing. So today I have a super in-depth interview with Kian Mansour. He's a cuber from Canada, and he's best known for solving the 3x3 with Roux, the Roux method, and he has a sub-7 official average as well as a 5.76 official single, and he's also a one-handed Roux solver. And mid-last year, he held the OH average record 9.54. And then Kian is also sponsored by the puzzle store Speed Cube Shop. In today's discussion, we get into how he picked Roux for his main method, how he's gotten so fast at one-handed solving, and then also near the end of the interview, he gives some great tips for calming nerves at competitions and how to get better solves. So that is definitely something to stick around for. This was such a fun and fascinating conversation with Kian, and if you have any feedback on this episode, please email me. My email address is josh@thecornercutterpodcast.com. So let's jump right into the interview. Hey Kian, thanks for joining me today on the Corner Cutter Podcast.
You're welcome, Josh. Thanks for having me.
So what's something interesting about yourself that most people wouldn't know?
So I think most people know pretty much all there is to know about me. I'm a cuber. I'm from Canada. My other hobby is powerlifting. But I think what a lot of people don't know about me is that I'm a huge nerd. I put my studies as my first priority. And before I even started cubing, which is already kind of a nerdy hobby as seen by the public, but before I started, I used to play a lot of video games. And that's why, like, some people comment on my videos saying I have a gaming mouse. And yeah, so I think that's a pretty interesting thing that a lot of people didn't know about me.
Okay. So, since you went to your first competition in 2015, what has been your biggest cubing accomplishment?
I'd say since then to now, my biggest accomplishment was the one-handed world record. I worked really hard towards that, just trying to get sub 10 and push the event to a further level. Other than that, I just think my progress overall has been a really big accomplishment for me. I think getting sub 7 and sub 10 within this time period was really important for me.
Okay, yeah. So I usually get into this with people a little bit later, but I really want to jump into it right away, and
right.
It will allow us to open up a little bit more later with some more information. But how were you introduced to the Rubik's Cube, and what led you to learning Roux?
Okay, so I think in 2014, it was Canada Day, which is July 1st. And for that long weekend, me and my parents drove down to Toronto and we were staying with some friends. So I was playing video games with my friend and we were just like taking turns playing online. And while I was waiting for my turn, I noticed a Rubik's Cube on his desk. So naturally, I just picked it up, started playing around with it. And as it happens, I just accidentally scrambled it up and couldn't fix it again. Then my friend turned over and he got mad at me for messing it up. And he basically forced me to learn how to solve it. So then I spent the rest of that day just going on YouTube and trying to learn how to solve the cube. So I think I learned the beginner method from one of the most popular tutorials. I don't remember exactly which one it was, but I learned the beginner method and then practiced a whole week, basically many hours a day. And I got back down to like maybe a minute and 15 seconds. Then I decided I really wanted to get good at this. And it was at that point where I searched up like advanced speed solving methods, and I stumbled upon an article on the speed solving forum where it was comparing like the main four methods: Roux, CFOP, ZZ, and Petrus. So naturally, when I read that, I knew that move count was really important. So I tried to learn Petrus at first, but since was only a text tutorial and no video tutorials, I couldn't really figure out how to make a 2x2 block. So then I just picked the next most efficient one, which was Roux, and it had the least algorithms, so I decided to stick with that.
Okay, that's such an interesting story on how you first learned to solve the cube.
Yeah, it's like, I think I got really lucky with picking my method. I don't think I would have gotten this far if I picked CFOP, and I can't imagine what would have happened if I ended up using Petrus. Like, that would be very strange.
So are you glad you learned Roux?
Yeah, definitely. One of the reasons I also picked it is because I like being unique. I didn't really want to do the same thing everyone else is doing. Also, I think because 3/4 of the steps are intuitive, I was able to progress really fast at the start. And I'd say another advantage of it is that it makes for a more interesting YouTube channel. I can make a lot more specific tips to Roux that not many other solvers are able to produce that type of content.
Before we get too deep into this topic, could you explain for the people listening that might not know how this method works, what you actually do?
Right, so the first step of Roux is to build a 3x2x1 block called the first block on the left side of the cube. And then you do the exact same thing on the right side, a 3x2x1 block on the right. So now what you have left is the four corners on the top, and then the edges on the top and the middle. Then you use an algorithm called a CMLL algorithm to orient and permute the four corners on the top. And lastly, the last step is called last six edges, fitting name because there's 6 edges left. And here you use M slices and U moves to orient and permute the remaining edges.
And are you able to solve CFOP? Are you able to solve the cube using that?
Yeah, so for a while, when I was stuck improving with Roux, maybe I was around 12 or 13 seconds, I just felt like trying out CFOP. So I learned it. I learned 2-look, OLL, and PLL. And nowadays I mess around with it sometimes. I think I average around 11 or 12. But my last layer is kind of weird. I do a 3-look kind of last layer. So I'll either do a 2-look OLL and then a 1-look PLL, or I'll orient edges and then do COLL and then EPLL.
Okay. Why do you think CFOP is so much more popular?
So I think CFOP is more popular because it was created first, quite a few years before Roux. And since it was made first, a lot of the people that were achieving world-class times ended up picking CFOP and getting fast with that. Then this just caused a cascade of generations of cubers looking up to those world-class cubers and then picking the same method as them. And then by the time Roux was introduced, I think it was created in 2005, and no one really started using it until maybe 2009 or 10. By that point, there was just already so many CFOP fast cubers as well as resources online that everyone would just find that first.
Okay. Have you, I'm sure you've inspired many people to learn and get fast at Roux. Have you heard any of those stories?
I get a lot of comments on my YouTube saying people picked Roux because of me or I inspired them to switch to Roux. But I think the main one that I have in mind right now is a cuber from the Philippines. His name is Sean Villanueva. And I don't know if I exactly inspired him to pick Roux, but I think I've influenced him and my videos have helped him to get fast. He's now the second fastest Roux solver in history. I think he has a 7.0 official average. So yeah, I'm really happy for him, and I hope that I influenced him in a good way.
That's great. Yeah. So now moving into one-handed, the other thing you're a master at. What led you to getting fast at one-handed?
So in the beginning, maybe like 2015, 2016, I didn't care about one-handed at all. I only practiced 3x3. But then some of my friends told me to start practicing one-handed because I could be good at it. I think the main people that got me into that were Antoine Canton and Kavin Tangtar Tharakul. So Kavin was sub 12 at Roux at that time, and I decided to start practicing a bit. And I got to about sub 15, sub 14 without much effort at all, just because by the time I started taking it seriously, I was already like averaging 7.5 at 3x3. And then from there, I just realized it would be really easy to improve and started putting a bit more effort into it.
And how did you decide which hand to use?
That's an interesting question. I'm not actually sure why I picked the left hand, because at that time, Kavin was the fastest at Roux and he used right hand. I think I saw like a really old video of Alexander Lau doing one-handed. I think I just copied him because I remember at the beginning I used left hand and I table abused with the front right edge on the bottom. So I essentially copied Alex Lau's style for OH at the beginning.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and you are right-handed?
Yeah, I am right-handed.
Okay. Mm-hmm. That's interesting. So, and you found people nowadays use mainly their left hand, right?
Yeah, so CFOP one-handed solvers have been using left hand for years, and there's a few right-handed solvers that are pretty fast. Kavin's fast with Roux. I think there's, the name's escaping me right now, but there's a couple like sub 13, sub 12 solvers that use CFOP right-handed, but I think just the resources and the algorithms influenced everyone to use left hand.
What was the point when you said to yourself, like, wow, I'm actually decent at one-handed? I want to get faster at this.
So it wasn't actually until after World Championships 2017 that I realized I can be really good at one-handed. Until then, I was kind of maybe doing 10 times the amount of 3x3 compared to one-handed. But then at World Championships, I think I got fourth one-handed without much practice at all, with like an 11.9 average. And then I realized I could just put a lot more effort into the event and get sub 11 and even beyond within under a year.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah. What was your biggest block over the years? Biggest thing you had to overcome?
I think the worst plateaus or kind of blocks I faced were at the same time as like other things in life that were going on. So if I would have exams or I was really busy with school, I wouldn't get to practice much. There were a couple times where I'd be averaging 6.9 on 3x3 or like 11 on one-handed, and then I'd have exams, then I'd have to re-break those barriers because I'd be like 0.3 slower. So it was pretty frustrating, but just getting back into it and making sure to work hard, that just helped push me back to where I was.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Do you have a most memorable OH solve?
I think there's two solves that I'd say are the most memorable in terms of one-handed. The first one would be my very last solve of the one-handed world record. The first three solves were a 9, an 8, and a 9. So after that, I was really nervous. The fourth solve, I got a 15, which makes sense. And then the fifth solve, I was basically jumping up and down before I couldn't stand. My knees were like shaking. And then I was just so happy after that last solve. I was jumping everywhere, like high-fiving my friends. So I was really happy with that solve. I think I did something weird with the solution, maybe a rotation. I don't always do that, but I just thought it would work, and it turned out being okay. So that would be the most memorable official solve. But there's also kind of a frustrating unofficial solve that I don't think I'll ever forget. It might have been like 3 or 4 months ago. I got a 5.9 one-handed, but I missed the last flick of the solve, and I DNF'd it by an M move. So that was pretty frustrating.
Oh, wow. Yeah, messing up those even unofficial solves.
Yeah, and I still don't have a sub 6. I have a bunch of 6.0 and a 5.9 DNF. So a little bit frustrating.
Maybe soon. Going back to your official world record average, what did you have to get on that last solve to break the world record?
I'm not completely sure of that, but my goal at that competition wasn't exactly to get world record. Just the whole months leading up to that, I really wanted to get something that was like decently sub 10. So all the counting times were like quite a bit under world records, so I was pretty happy with that.
Mm-hmm. What are
I think
you?
at worst I needed like a 10.3 or a 10.4 to get like a 9.98 to just barely break it, but
Uh-huh.
I was really happy with getting like a 9.9 to make it a 9.5 average.
Yeah. Uh-huh. What are you averaging globally now?
Ooh, right now I'd say I'm like low nine. For a while, maybe in August, September, and then again in January or February, I was like well sub nine, but then exams came up. I didn't practice for 4 months, and then I got a lot worse.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So is it just like getting better at nerves at comps?
Yeah, so
You
at
need.
competitions, one-handed, I can't really figure out how to not mess up. It seems like every turn I do, I end up turning a wrong layer or just getting stuck. But also, I feel like hardware has a lot to do with it.
Okay. Mm-hmm. What cube are you using?
So I use a Supernova Volk 3M. I've been using this one for a little over a year, and when it's good, it's like really good. Like I can get like 8.3 to 8.5 averages with it at home if it's performing really well. But then if I don't lube it for a while or if it gets too gummy and slow, then I'm like barely sub 10 and it's quite annoying.
Yeah, having cubes go through those phases is annoying
Yeah, like
because
I
you
don't think
you
anyone knows how it works or just cubes have a mind of their own. It's like they're alive.
yeah. Uh-huh. Yeah, you're like, "Oh wow, my cube's working so good today. I wish it could always be like this." And then
Yeah.
a couple days or week later, it's not doing too well.
Yeah,
So,
I think one theory that's been presented by Jake Clausen is that like when you travel to competitions, and if you travel pretty far, there could be differences in humidity in the atmosphere. So if it's like more humid, that would make your cube absorb more water and become more gummy, or if it's really dry, that could make your cube too fast.
that that sounds like a possible solution. Yeah.
Yeah, so I guess for traveling, if you want to go like around the world, maybe there'll be a lot of differences between like Texas compared to like Florida compared to Australia. So
How has your main cube changed over the years?
I think I started out with a Guhong and then switched to an Aolong, then a Weilong V2. After that, I think I used a Thunderclap. The Weilong and the Thunderclap I used for a year and a half, I think each. So those were like my go-tos for a long time. Then the Volk 3 was released, so I used that for a while. And then right before World Championships, I switched to a GAN UM, where I got the 6.86 average with that in the first round. I think that was my first magnetic cube, and that really changed everything for me because when I got back from that, I got the GAN SM. I used that for a few months, but then I got the Volk M, and Volk M's have essentially been my mains for, what does that make it? Almost 2 years now.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
And are you using a different kind of cube for just normal 3x3?
Yes, so my 3x3 cubes are generally pretty tight and have pretty gummy lube in them. They're Cosmic Volk 3Ms, but my one-handed cubes are Supernova Volk 3Ms with really, really loose tensions and just really light lube, so I can do like slice moves really fast.
Okay. Mm-hmm. What do you see the limit for OH being in the next 5 years or next 10 years?
So next 5 years, I definitely think sub 8.5 and sub 8 are possible. In the next 10 years, I'm not sure if turning and consistency and accuracy of turning gets to some crazy point, I maybe like under 7.5 would be possible in like 10, 15 years, but I can't really see that far.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Now, for someone wanting to get into one-handed or has been practicing a little bit but wants to get more serious with it, what are the steps for them?
So I'd say the most important thing for being fast at one-handed is being fast at 3x3, because if you need to have a certain baseline level of skill, look ahead, efficiency, all those things just to make sure that you can progress at a fast rate. If you're averaging like 20 seconds on 3x3, you're not gonna have as good of improvement one-handed if you're compared to if you're averaging like 8 or 10 seconds. So I'd say the first step is to get fast at 3x3. But beyond that, for one-handed specifically, The next important things are to learn proper turning. There's a lot of tutorials online teaching the optimal finger tricks. And after you learn turning, you can begin to learn one-handed specific algorithms, whether it be OLL or PLL if you use CFOP, or the one-handed CMLLs for Roux. And after that, it just comes down to practice, and some more advanced things would be optimizing your ergonomics and solutions to cater more to one-handed solving.
Okay. Are there any specific tutorials you recommend?
There's a lot of turning tutorials if you're doing like CFOP. I think Antoine has a tutorial, Michal Pleskovic has a tutorial for turning, and Phil Yu has an old one that I learned from. But for Roux turning, I have one on my channel, and I think Kevin Tanktar Tharakul or Guru on YouTube has a turning video on his too.
Okay. I'll try to link to some of those in the show notes as well.
Yeah, that would be awesome.
Okay. Now, what's a realistic initial goal for someone starting out? Is it like to be half your two-handed times, or what do you think?
Oh, okay. I think someone made a graph comparing the ratio between 3x3 and one-handed times of like everyone in the WCA database. And I'll see if I can find it and send it to you later. But from what I can remember, 1.8, like having your one-handed times be 1.8 times your 3x3 times is pretty normal.
I meant double your
double
two-handed times.
I'd say something between like 1.6 to 2 times your two-handed times. At the beginning, it's going to be closer to 2 times, but getting down to like 1.6, 1.7 isn't that hard.
Okay. Now, what about someone averaging 15 to 25 seconds on OH? What are your tips for them?
For them, I'd say figure out like what you average 3x3. So if you're like sub 12 on 3x3 and averaging in that range, there's still probably a lot of room for one-handed. So at that point, it would just be like learning to turn faster, doing turning drills, learning better algorithms for one-handed. But say if they're averaging like 15 seconds 3x3 and like 20, 22 seconds one-handed, then I'd say maybe it's more important to focus on 3x3 and bring those times down.
Okay. What annoys you most about one-handed solving, and what do you like most about it?
So what I like most about it is that it's kind of like slow motion 3x3. It's really easy to like just have good look ahead and not pause at all, and it's kind of relaxing compared to like the fast pace of 3x3. But what I really hate about one-handed solving is it's really risky compared to every event. Like blind 3x3 big cubes, you can make little mistakes and kind of recover in a way, but one-handed, if you like do a wrong turn, it can throw your whole grip off and you can drop the cube and waste like 2 seconds just because of a cube drop.
Okay, wow. Over the years, have you had any issues with your hands and wrists from doing so much one-handed?
So I've never actually had issues with any wrist or hand pain from one-handed, especially when doing Roux OH. But when I was just starting OH, I tried to learn ZZ at the beginning, and I think I averaged like 19 or 17 seconds with it. So when I did ZZ, I would get wrist pain, but then I switched to Roux, and I've never had any hand or wrist pain since then.
Wow, okay. So what do you think the reason was with ZZ?
I think just because there's like rotations and a lot of moves and a lot of spamming R and U, I think that's more of a stress on the hand. Whereas with Roux, even though you're doing like M slices, which is kind of demanding, the number of turns per solve and the turning speed is a bit lower.
Okay.
So I think it's less stressful.
How has your mindset about competitive solving changed over the past few years?
I'd say when I started, or even from like 2015 to 2018 or 2017, I used to be really concerned with what people's at-home PBs were, what they were averaging in competition. I'd like go on people's PB sheets, their cube comps, their YouTubes, and try to figure out what they averaged and see where I can place at competitions, if I can podium, make finals, and all that stuff. But nowadays, I realize that I just need to stay motivated in myself and keep my head down and practice, because in the end, I'm just going to do the best I can do. And then wherever that places me among everyone else, I'll be happy with.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to look at it. How do you keep up the motivation to practice, and how has that affected you, like with times and stuff over the years?
So when I started and I was trying to get fast, I would practice a lot. Like for the first few summer breaks where I didn't have school and I wanted to improve really fast, I would do like 6 to 8 hours a day. And that really helped push my times from like sub 10 to sub 8 really, really quickly. But then beyond that, in the last, I'd say, year and a half to 2 years, most of my practice is just to stay consistent and kind of stay where I am. I'm not really like when I have school, I'm not really able to practice so much that I can improve. But my main motivation is just staying the same speed and being able to maintain where I am in the community.
Okay. And final question on this topic: how do you balance personal time and cubing?
So during the school year, when I have university, cubing's actually my third priority. My first priority would be my studies. Second would be powerlifting and my training for that. And cubing would be third. So typically, I just make sure to always go to class and get my studying and assignments done as fast as possible. And then after that was finished, I would go to the gym and get my training in for the day. And if I had leftover time at the end of the day, I'd maybe do 50 to 100 solves just to make sure I'm not terrible at cubing. Usually my sessions during the week would be pretty short, but I would really take advantage of weekends when I didn't have class. So I'd get my studying done in the morning and then spend most of the afternoon and night doing cubing, maybe like 200 to 300 solves.
Can you tell us the story on how you got sponsored by Speed Cube Shop?
I think I got sponsored in 2016 or 17. I'm not entirely sure, but I think they opened applications to Team SCS, and then I just submitted an application, and I just talked about what my times are like, what my goals are for the future, and they were kind enough to believe in me and sponsor me. So I think I've come a long way, and yeah, I'm glad that they've supported me through this whole journey.
That's cool. What plans do you have for future competitions over the summer?
So I competed this weekend at just a local competition. It was a lot of fun, and I spent this competition kind of experimenting with different mindsets when competing. I think I almost have it figured out, so I'm going to use that in the future for my competitions coming up. And this summer, the two I'm going to are the Sydney warm-up, as well as World Championships in Melbourne, of course. So I'm hoping to perform as well as I can at those two.
Okay, that sounds fun. Now, speaking of SES, you have done a few of the live streams over the past year. Could you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so leading into 2018, me and Anthony Paterakis had the idea of kind of making a series called the Team SCS Talks, where we would bring the world-class solvers from different events that were sponsored by Speedcube Shop and just discuss with them in terms of their personal stories, as well as their thoughts and their tips for their event. So I think we picked an event for every month, whether it be 3x3, one-handed, big cubes, and we just rolled through, brought some guests in, and we talked about it. So you can still find them uploaded on the Speedcube Shop YouTube channel. I think there's a lot of good information in all of them. And yeah, it was a lot of fun to host, and I'm glad we did that.
Yeah, that's sort of like a podcast, but
yeah,
just a live stream.
Yeah, and we do some races at the end, so it helped to have some video footage of that.
Oh, yeah. That sounds fun.
Yeah.
Do you have any stories that are fun memories from the past?
I think every competition is kind of a story in and of itself, but the ones that pop out to me right away as being really memorable and really funny would be, the first one would be from a competition in January 2018 out west in Edmonton called Cubing Under the Stars. So I was there with Antoine Canton. We traveled together, and the 2x2 finals at the competition, they decided to run it in a best of one format. So you would just have one solve, and whoever gets the fastest single would win the competition.
Whoa.
And I could say that's probably the most nervous I've been for a round of anything ever. Like even compared to like the world record or my national records or like any round where I failed at Worlds or whatever. This was the most nerve-wracking round. I was just shaking in the chair when I was warming up, and me and Antoine, it was kind of like head to head, and the winner of each head to head would get like a bag of Skittles. So me and Antoine were last, seeded first and second. Antoine did his solve and he got a DNF because of a corner twist. So we all laughed really hard at that. And then I went to do my solve and I was inspecting. I found a solution really fast, panicked, started it, and then I think I dropped the cube a U2 away, had to pick it back up, do another U2, and then stop the timer. Ended up with like a 4-second solve.
And you won?
No, I think I got like 10th or something.
Ah.
But yeah, seeing the top two seeds in that just completely fail was pretty hilarious.
Yeah. That's actually a good competition idea. Would you like to do that again?
Yeah, definitely. I think as long as there's like no one really competitive in 2x2 in the area, who like actually cares about getting a good average, as long as there's no one like that around, I think picking a best of one for the event format would just make it a lot more fun for the final.
Yeah. Do you have any words for Roux solvers before we start wrapping up the interview?
Sure, I'd say for specifically to Roux solvers, if you need to like learn new concepts or new skills, definitely use my channel, but don't restrict yourself to that. There's a lot more resources available to you, whether it be other Roux solvers or even CFOP solvers. Like when I was starting, I would just watch example solves or just videos about improvement uploaded on Cubing World back then or Felix's channel or whatever I could find. And you can definitely kind of transfer over whatever CFOP tips they give to Roux. And yeah, you don't have to restrict yourself to just trying to learn from Roux content.
What's something you've changed your mind about recently?
So recently, the thing I've changed my mind about is kind of my mindset when competing. So for years, I was trying to kind of model my mindset after the people who gave advice to me about competing. So whether it be like Felix or Patrick or Bill, they always tell me to use a good warm-up cube that was similar to the main cube, to breathe deeply before solving, and to not really care about the solve. But I tried that for years and it really didn't work. And then I decided to try some new things at this recent competition, and I found that they worked a lot better. So I definitely changed my mind about that type of thing, like mentality when competing.
Do you mind sharing what those things are?
Yeah, so the first thing, I decided to stop filming solves because ever since I actually started cubing, I'd always get nervous when filming. So I decided to stop filming my official solves, and immediately that gave me a sub-7 average again this weekend, which is better than I've done in a long time. Another thing, Jake Clausen, after getting his 3-blind world record, he told me to try warming up on a Chi big sail. And the kind of logic behind that is if you use a cube that's a lot clunkier and slower than your actual cube, once you get the cube and start solving the official solve, it'll feel a lot easier to turn and you won't lock up as much. And that actually worked for me, and I'm going to use it more in the future.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. That's some great tips, and that's really cool that you've developed your own routine to do before each solve.
Thank you. I think it's important for everyone to like try their own thing and take what other people have to say, but experiment with everything just to see what works.
Now, if you could go back in time to when you first started cubing, what advice would you give yourself?
I think the main piece of advice that I'd give myself is to focus purely on 3x3, one-handed, and 3-blind. I think I wasted a lot of time trying to get good at more events like 2x2 and 4x4, and I really didn't enjoy those, but I still wanted to be good at them. So I think if I focused more time on my main events, I would have been a lot faster than at them now than I really am.
Okay. Where can people find you online and find your stuff?
So I think the best place to find me is YouTube. My YouTube is just Kian Mansour. I have a lot of solves and tutorials, example solves, solving tips, competition tips, just anything I can think of there. So if you want to take a look at those or comment to ask a question, that's definitely the easiest way to do it. Also, you can follow me on Instagram. My Instagram is just Kian Mansour, no spaces or anything. I post some competition pictures, life pictures, just general anything that comes to me. And lastly, I have my Facebook page called Kian Mansour Speedcuber. And for that, I just post recaps of competitions or pictures. Sometimes I link my YouTube videos that I want people to see. So yeah, that's pretty much it.
Okay, I'll have links to all those in the show notes as well. Kian, thanks so much for taking the time to share your story, information, and insights on the Corner Cutter podcast.
You're welcome. Thanks so much for having me. It was a lot of fun.
That was great. So if you have any feedback, please email in. My email address is josh@thecornercutterpodcast.com. Hey, I just last week received my shipment of the new business cards I recently designed. So if you would like any, I'll send you I can fit 30 in an envelope, and I'll send them to you for free. So all you have to do is send me your mailing address and I'll ship them out to you. And if you want to pass them out, and that would be great if you could just bring them to a competition and just put them on the drop-off table or somewhere right around there where people see them, or even pass them out if you feel comfortable doing that. It's such a big help to spread the word about the podcast. And huge thanks to the people who have already done that. Remember, I'll have links to all the resources Kian mentioned in the show notes on the website, thecornercutterpodcast.com. Thanks, guys, so much for listening. I really appreciate you coming back every week. And I want to thank Kian for coming on episode 79 to share his knowledge and expertise. So that wraps up episode 79. Let's take it back to the scrambling table, and I'll talk to you guys again next week in episode 80 of the Corner Cutter Podcast. '80s next week. It will probably be a solo episode sharing your feedback, as well as cubing news.